So Brad, Ingemar, and Sonal, hang tight. I'm going to start exactly at 4:30. I know that there's other people joining as well, so I'm going to have a lot of folks ready to be here. Okay. Stuart, you joined from the other meeting. I'm so happy.
Hi, Jenna. Yes, I've just been on something about AI, so I needed something a little bit different, I think.
Oh, totally. Just like I feel like you go from AI to my topic. It's a good shift.
It's quite late here, see, so it's midnight. So yeah, I need
Yeah.
it.
Wait, so where are you?
I'm UK.
Ah, I got it. Okay. Wow. That's dedication to the unconference.
Oh yeah, I'll be up most of the night, I think.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy you're here.
Thank you.
All right. So for those of you who are here and for those of you who are coming in any minute, I am going to use this time wisely because we only have 30 minutes. And I'm really, I really want to make sure that there's time for questions. So I'm going to start presenting now. A couple of kind of notes for you. If you could mute your microphone, that would be really great. Just don't want to, we all don't need to hear your soundtrack, even if it's really good. The second thing is that I'm going to fly through this presentation. So if there's anything that you want to make note of, feel free to just take a screenshot of it. I'm also happy to send you the presentation afterwards if you'd like. So yeah, just feel free to use screenshot technology on your computer. And we're going to get started now, okay? So let me just share my screen. Dun, 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 dun. No, including sound effects, right? All right, cool. All right, I hope you can all see this. If you can't, then at least one of you should unmute and tell me so. If not, I'm just gonna kind of fly through this and get started. So I hope the topic was interesting enough for you to join. Delicious food, creative gardening, self-reliance, and time outside. Climate Resilience 101. There's a lot that I'm going to be covering here, and I'm also going to keep myself honest and on time. So here we go. First of all, I hope that you're okay. This is a weird time. And I also just wanted to share that I was talking to a friend of mine who's in the States right now, and he's working kind of on the front lines of this. He's been meeting with people who are in local governments. And he was saying, and I said, hey, is there anything else that, you're getting the word out about? And he said, listen, as soon as we lift the restrictions, you just got to know that they really shouldn't have been lifted. So this is just my plea to you to stay at a safe distance and take care of yourselves over the next couple of weeks here, or God forbid, months. Hi, I'm Jenna. I do a lot of things. I'm an environmental communication strategist. I formulate companies' social impact programs. I brand companies, and I also kind of get people excited about the environment and sustainability. This screenshot is of a new video series and newsletter that I have that's a weekly thing called Down to Earth. I would love for you to sign up for it. I'll share more of that information at the end. My goal in the next, 20 minutes is for you to feel inspired to make some good decisions. That's my goal. And I'm telling you this before we get into talk about climate change and the climate emergency that we're all facing, because it's going to kind of get a little depressing. And then we're going to go into some fun, inspiring actions and things that we all can do. So like I said, climate change. If COVID wasn't in the headlines right now, we would be talking about climate change. This isn't anything new. I'm sure you've seen all of the news. It's truly terrifying. To kind of go through some recent developments with you, things that have been happening definitely over the past few months, apart from our kind of global temperature rising. A report came out on April 17th about how our North Pole is going to completely melt for the first time this September. So we know with seasonal fluctuations that it's going to kind of melt, refreeze, melt, refreeze. We know that by 2050 it's going to be completely melted, but we know that it is going to melt for the first time in September. Obviously, this has lots of implications for polar bears and any kind of life that's up there, but it also has geopolitical implications as well. We've now opened up a new ocean. the first time that I learned about this was from some friends of mine who are climate modelers in Germany. And I remember just like sitting with them saying, wait, we can't change this. And they said, no, we can't change this. This is already happening. We're like, the North Pole is melting. See, I told you it would get a little depressing. This is sea level rise. So, you know, with the North Pole melting, we have sea level rise. These maps are a little bit inaccurate because they assume that humans wouldn't do something to stop that kind of water coming into these cities. Good example is Amsterdam. We have that city nowadays because of the actions that people took with flood barriers and dikes and canals. So we're going to be doing that, but there's certain places of the world that can't afford to, like Dakar, Senegal. A friend of mine is working there right now in climate resilience, and this map terrifies him. Next, extremely high and cold temperatures, but this chart here shows the extremely warm daytime highs as well as nighttime lows. So temperature. There's also a lot of ecological change that we're seeing right now. So this doesn't, you know, this is, ecological change. So we're seeing people overtapping aquifers. So we have less access to clean water. By 2060, this is going to be a real issue. We're already seeing it happen now. Places in South Africa, Mexico City, for instance, we've overtapped our water. There's also a lot of, you know, just if you mismanage a field where you're growing crops with pesticides and fertilizer, that's also getting into our water supplies. So there's lots going on with our water. Bad news continues. Our topsoil is completely depleted. In about 60 years, we're going to run out of topsoil. That doesn't mean that we don't, you know, we can't run out of dirt, but we're running out of soil, that living soil that that we grow things in. 95% of our food, it's a big deal. Great Barrier Reef, bleached, dying. This article was very uplifting. It's official, the Great Barrier Reef cannot be saved. We're looking at industrial beef and other animal production, just ruining our fields and nearby towns and villages with agricultural runoff. There's also lots of problems with where to store all of the waste from those animals. And most recently in Australia, I'm sure you all saw, when I read this article, I just thought, like, what? There were dead animals all through here. Carcasses of kangaroos, feral deer, numerous species strewn across the charred landscape. It sounds like you know, something out of a sci-fi comic book that I would read, except it's real life and it just happened. Okay, I told you, it get a little depressing. Now we're going to talk about what we can do. Now, the thing about individual action, and there's individual action, there's collective action, but before we dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about what resilience looks like. Resilience is a word that's become very politicized, and it's also a word that I think is something that we should keep in mind as we look at all of this. It's no longer that we can't just mitigate climate change now. We also have to adapt to it. And adaptation looks like resilience. Resilience is, what I think about resilience is, it's kind of like a rubber band. You pull it hard enough, and it doesn't snap, right? It kind of bounces back. And we need to look at the steps that we can take going forward under the lens of resilience. It's no longer about mitigation, it's adaptation. Adaptation is resilience. It's a form of resilience. Some ground rules. So personal versus collective responsibility. This is huge in ecological, environmentally minded circles right now. How adaptation works, and looking at climate change as something that's on both a local level and a global level, and understanding the differences there. To start, bamboo toothbrushes. So why do I have a bamboo toothbrush on this slide? It's that I think that there's a lot of good intention, but I also think that there's a lot of guilt that we see in today's kind of world around being green, shopping green, acting green. And when I see a bamboo toothbrush, I think, okay, great. That's a step in the right direction. But what my mind goes to is, what if we could somehow make sure that all of our household products are made with renewable materials that are good for our environment, right? Like if we want to tackle the plastic problem, we need to tackle system change as well. So because of personal responsibility being so kind of in the center, everyone's talking about it, it has led to a lot of really great habits. So using up leftovers, composting waste, water bottles, et cetera, that's all great. But the thing that I focus on as a communication strategist is that guilt doesn't really lead to people feeling inspired. It just leads to more guilt. And so I think these actions are great, but we need to kind of frame them within the right context, so that instead of this being like hey, you should feel horrible about what you've done to the environment, it's, hey, let's all be resilient together. Here are some, life improvements that we all can make so that we have a better world going forward. Another elephant in the room that I want to throw out there is that the environmental movement right now has a lot of privileged people in it. And if someone can't feed their family, they're not going to buy a bamboo toothbrush, right? And so this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's something that I think about a lot in reference, goodness knows how many times. But you'll see more environmental awareness and action taking place in countries and in places, neighborhoods, where people have the opportunity to think about this problem because they're not worried that they're going to get mugged on when they're walking home at night. There's another thing about personal versus collective responsibility, and that is that there are certain companies and repeat offenders who have known about this problem for a while and keep on putting more CO2 into the atmosphere. No surprise here, there's a lot of oil companies. There's a similar graph for agricultural companies as well. Next, I know I'm flying through this, there's a reason. This is a kind of map of what the IPCC says climate adaptation looks like. This is from a recent report on the oceans and the cryosphere. We all think that it can't happen to us, right? That like our exposure is low, that like, okay, my vulnerability is lower, I got this, is good, or this isn't gonna happen for another like 30, 40, 50 years. And I just want to say that it's not really, yes, there are people that are studying and that they use these graphs and these maps to predict kind of what actions we should all take. But I actually think that at this point, it's about inspiring to change their habits, not necessarily this action versus that action, but like, this is how I think about this, or this is my day-to-day set of habits or my lifestyle, right? So if we're going to tackle this global problem on a local level, I'd like to say that it happens with lifestyle changes. It doesn't really happen with a bamboo toothbrush. So the plan. Now we're going to get into some fun, inspiring things. These are the 4 areas that I recommend that we focus on when it comes to our personal lifestyles, because really, I mean, we could talk about systems change, and there's people that are really, super up on that. But I wanted to kind of show the way that I'm thinking about this from a personal perspective as someone who specializes in this area. And I'd love to just kind of inspire you to start thinking about resilience and your personal resilience a little bit more. So first, food, delicious food. Things I hear my friends say. I keep hearing people talk about how plant-based eating is good for the environment. When I hear this, I'm like, yes, okay. And then I think, I'm like, oh, well, the question's a little bit off, because you see, first of all, it's excellent for your health. And then second, yes, it's great for our environment when farmed correctly. So now, why am I focusing on health? So, I grew up in America, right? Lifestyle diseases, the American diet is called the standard American diet, and people refer to it internationally as the SAD diet, like, because it's a sad diet. We don't just, there's a lot of, obviously there's I'm not a doctor, but like, you don't just get heart disease or certain types of diabetes, right? This is all lifestyle diseases. It's what we're eating, it's how we're living, and we're killing ourselves. There are nutritionists and doctors who have been kind of sounding the alarm on this for years. One that I'm a big fan of is Dr. Esselstyn, and I would love to read this out loud. He said, "Some people think that a plant-based diet, whole foods diet, is extreme. 500,000 people a year will have their chest opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn into their coronary artery. Some people will call that extreme." There's a ton of information out there. And when talking with friends about this, they're always like, "Oh, so you've read all the books and you've seen all the movies." I'm like, yes, I have. Now, if that's too overwhelming, or if you're like, "I really don't want to see another sad cow or chicken," I would say that these are the three kind of things that I would like to recommend to you today. Feel free to screenshot. There's How Not to Die, great book. If you're a book person. If you're a documentary person, there's The Game Changers. Over on the right, we have 2 YouTube videos. One is 30 minutes long from a cardiologist that's just really relatable, very authentic guy. He's a dad and he was obese and a cardiologist, and he talks about his journey there. And then the video on the right is from Dr. T. Colin Campbell. I'm a huge fan of him and his research. He authored the China study, which is one of the biggest nutrition studies ever conducted. And it kind of netted out that a plant-based diet is the best one for you. Another thing that a lot of people have been saying in this realm is you should eat you should eat something that your great-grandmother would recognize as food. This is a picture from the 1900s of New York's Mulberry Street. If you zoom in really closely, this is what I noticed: veggies. Veggies, root veggies, bread from the bakery. So rediscover healthy food, please. If you're wondering how, that really just means walking into a grocery store, choosing something from this section that you might run past, and figuring out how to cook something with it. For me, I've spoken with some folks and they're like, "Hey, you eat rabbit food? Is it just like salads that you're eating?" I'm like, "No, it's something like this." But if something like this is not appealing to you right now, then maybe make something like this: a vegan macaroni and cheese. Delicious. Also endorsed by a plant-based pediatrician. If you absolutely must have fast food, maybe late at night, once you get to hang out with your friends again, you're going to start seeing more and more fast food companies have plant-based alternatives. So if you must, you can do a Whopper, I guess. Even though that's not food, that's food product. It's like eating styrofoam that has flavoring attached to it and you crave it, but then you feel like shit afterwards, right? So yeah, it's a lot healthier for you to eat plant-based, but guess what? There's also a major ecological implication for you eating this way. Don't need to say more about this graph here. So next steps, CSAs, I'm a big fan, or go to a farmer's market. There's a Dr. Greger has this Daily Dozen app where there's like lists of different foods that you can make sure that you get enough of in your diet. I'd recommend that. I personally use that. And learn how to cook. COVID, thank you. At least one thing that's good that's coming out of this is that we're all cooking. Next, creative gardening. Me, garden? I can't even keep a plant alive. One of my friends who's on this said this to me. So if you don't want to garden, you can get into foraging. It's fun. Or how about you're a person that likes to cook or feel like you're tinkering with something and making something out of nothing, right? Then maybe you're into fermentation, canning, jarring, making your own bread. Maybe you're the kind of person that will get really excited once your local supermarket rolls out a section like this. This is a photo from a supermarket in Amsterdam, Albert Heijn, amazing chain. You can literally walk up to it with scissors and snip off whichever herbs you would like. So why am I talking about gardening? And why am I saying it's important even if you're not really that into it? It's that I really believe that almost anyone can start gardening, but the word gardening has this connotation to it that you somehow have to have this like backyard area, even if you're in the city. You know, there's a barrier to entry. One of my friends who's listening right now is a gardener, and he taught me that herb plants are actually a great like entry gateway plant to gardening. So you can just throw herbs in a windowsill. Mint grows like a weed. If you want to have like fancy spa mint water every day, you can. You can also grow things in an old drawer, container gardening inside, no big deal. You can grow mushrooms and used coffee grounds. It's awesome, like having your own mushrooms. Mushroom people are also just like really fun to talk to about these things, because they, you know, will have like just grow lamps in their basement, and not even, some of them don't even know lamps. I mean, literally just containers of coffee grounds and mushrooms. I had a fire escape garden like this in New York. I grew tomatoes. That was cool. Tomatoes in Brooklyn. If you like community gardening, if you get really into gardening, this is another option. You've seen these, I'm sure, no matter where you are in the world. And then, yes, if you're really into this, you can have your own garden outside that looks idyllic, like Miss Honey's storybook cottage. So here's the thing. My challenge to you is that you acquire or grow at least one plant that you can eat something from. And the reason why is that if you eat more food, or, you know, even vegetables, herbs that you grow yourself, that's one less thing you have to buy at the store. But it also kind of brings you closer to the environment in general, kind of a new type of relationship there. I really recommend this TV show, Monty Don's Big Dreams, Small Spaces. It's really fun. This guy is, you know, just he's like a ray of sunshine. And he'll go into these like tiny backyards in the UK and like say like, this is how you should grow this and that. And it kind of just, yeah, I don't know, it's inspiring. So gardening, self-reliance. Is this when you get all prepper on me? Yes. Yes, I will. Gardening, self-reliance, right? That's why I'm telling you to do it. Second thing is that we're going to start seeing water shortages. There we go. A city that's been excelling in this, in my opinion, not on a city level, but on a personal level, Mexico City. You'll see a ton of people collecting rainwater, harvesting rainwater, and using it in their households. These systems are incredibly cheap. So if you have your own household, if you're at a stage where you can think about taking in one of these containers, I would strongly recommend it. Next, composting. There's a lot of citywide composting programs, but there's also personal composting. You can just red worms, go to town. There's tons of YouTube videos. When we're talking about waste, I have to mention that we're also seeing a lot of innovation right now in the personal waste category. There are new toilets being invented, and I'm sure you've seen the news reports about COVID, meaning that everyone's buying a bidet now. It is absolutely absurd that we do our business into clean, fresh water, like potable drinking water. That is just crazy if you really think about it, right? If we know that we're going to have a water crisis, and also knowing that so many people don't even have access to proper sanitation and clean toilets in the first place, it's a big deal. If you're interested in waste, there's like a whole movement around this right now that's really inspiring. Solar panels. Within the past 5 years, there are some Chinese companies that have come up with some really innovative designs, and they kind of cracked how to roll them out and on an affordable scale. We're also seeing solar windows and solar shingles. These are not like, this actually exists today, which was shocking for me to discover. We're also seeing advancements within green buildings that can breathe, buildings that are also made with materials that don't leach hazardous chemicals into our environment. You're going to start noticing, and this is mostly happening, I've seen in Europe personally, buildings made out of timber in the middle of a city. Self-reliance, right? We're talking about self-reliance. Okay, biking. biking, huge form of self-reliance. Now, if you live in a place like where I grew up in the States, biking might not be an option. So you're looking at EVs. The Nissan Leaf is really, a lot of people are talking about that in California right now. We have BRT. So this is Bogota's like rapid transit system. What's really great about it is that it's easy to switch up. You can change a route or change very quickly, unlike a metro, for instance, where you wouldn't have to dig a new tunnel. Japan's Shinkansen, the most amazing train system. I felt like I was in the future when I was on it. Yes, I look at public transportation as a form of self-reliance, right? Anything that you can do that's kind of taking more of that CO2 out of the atmosphere, the better. Another trend that we've been noticing is that minimalism is also a form of self-reliance. The less you have, the more organized you are, the more mental space you have, etc. I'm not saying that everyone needs to have a wardrobe that consists of like gray tones and blue and white. I'm including this here because the more you have your stuff in order in that area, the more time you have to spend to allocate towards other things, which thereby makes you more self-reliant. And then yes, there are people who, like Sean James, who moved north of Toronto, Canada, built a log cabin, is entirely off the grid, has an outdoor kitchen, an outhouse, etc. This YouTube channel is incredible. And there's 15 million views here on this video for the reason that this is just really inspiring for a lot of people. But you don't all have to do that. That's not what self-reliance is. Not being a prepper. Self-reliance is having your stuff in order. And I couldn't get through this presentation without having at least one stock image here. But this is just to say that the more that you are self-reliant, the more you can be there for your community, thereby lifting up the people around you, right? And so if you have it within your ability, within your power to start perhaps gardening more, or, you know, collecting your own water, etc., like you are going to be more able to be there for other people. And we've seen in today's world, I don't need to stress enough, like how important that is, that we have communities that are strong and stronger than the ones that we have now. So just, I had this in here as a note for myself to make sure that I would tell you that COVID-19 has kind of taught a lot of us what self-reliance looks like. We've gotten a lesson in that already. And something that a psychologist friend of mine shared with me once, I asked her, I said, hey, what do you think adults need to do more of in general? And she was like, well, here's the thing. Adults kind of forgot how to take care of themselves. When you're with a kid, you ask them things like, hey, are you hungry? Do you need a hug? Do you need a sweater? Are you cold? Are you too hot? We as adults should be asking ourselves that same question. And for some reason, somewhere down the road, we kind of like lost that ability to take care of ourselves. And I look at self-reliance as a part of that. So again, I know I'm flying through this. We'll talk about it once there's time for questions, hopefully in a few minutes. Be more self-reliant, okay? There's a couple of examples that I gave here, but know that it's gonna make things more affordable for you in the long run. And last but not least, time outside. Time outside. I don't need to stress how great this is. I think you know how great it is. I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, time outside is good for you for these reasons, you know. Something that I'm personally doing is that I'm trying to spend at least 50% of my waking hours outside. That also looks like, you know, hopefully when lockdown is over, and maybe even beyond that, like having picnics with friends in the future, walking on beaches, like that type of thing. That's what I'm talking about here. So resilience. I know I just talked about lifestyle things, right? But the more that we have these types of topics floating around in our minds on a day-to-day level, I think we'll be more prepared for what's happening with climate change. And so I'm telling you about this now in 2020, because we know it's coming around the corner in 2050, 2060, even before that, even right now, right? In the news cycle that I showed you before. So this is the time to start considering these things and experimenting with them so that later it's already a part of your life. So thank you. I know that was really quick, but I really wanted to impart a lot and hopefully inspire you to kind of start thinking about all of this more. So if you have any questions, we have some time, and I would love to hear from you if you have, if you want to see the presentation, there's anything else you want to know about from me. I am a real human being. I'm not just in this computer, so feel free to send me an email. I'd also encourage you to sign up for my newsletter, downtoearth.substack.com. So